return. I feel very much appreciated to be invited here to EESC, and you to be in your community. Also, I must tell you that it is good to be here in one of the close campus of the Pannon University, maiden name Veszprém-Vegyipari Egyetem, where I graduated from a few years ago. No, recently, very recently. I'm a member of the European Economic and Social Committee, which is a body, an advising body in the European Union. It's a consultative body. We used to say a critical consultative body to the three legislative or, should I say, power units, which is the Parliament, the Council, and the Commission. Very theoretically, every proposal, every prepared directive, orientation, legislation, lex, and so on, must be sent to us before issuing for opinion building. Let's come to our topic today. Trust. What is trust? I met a very frappant, very markant expression of the phenomenon of trust formulated in a little bit folkloristic way. When I was a young starting engineer, the first Western trip of mine went to Pecos, Texas, United States. The proving ground, I worked in the rubber and tire industry, and we were taken into a local pub. It's a semi-museum, semi-pub. And on the wall, it was written, probably some of you may know it, "In God we trust. Everyone else shall pay in cash." So that was a very strict, strong definition of that. No?
Side. It's just side. There you go.
No. Oh, okay, here we are. We heard already from Jody a definition or a trial to a definition. I was able to collect many of them. I just selected a few which show a certain kind of common feature, before them. Just a small remark. Formally, they can be considered as a classical definition. There is a genus proximum, and there are the differentia specifica. Formally, it's a definition. Fine. However, if we go a little bit more down in the details, we feel a little bit of uncertainty. It's not always a classical definition. What is, however, interesting and a common feature of them, that the dimensions to what the trust relates are twofold. There is one on the personal side, and immediately into a single person and an institution, which is a community, composed of a community of people. And the other one, there is a time dimension. I trust that in the future the expectations will be fulfilled or will come true. How do we collect, how do we get the trust? Of course, partially we inherit. Partially we inherit. We grow up, we are socialized in an environment whereby certain definitive features and components of trust are already embedded. Everything is, and there is the other aspect, what we can see there, is on evidence. good, but by far not perfect evidence. Let me give you another. The pub slogan I mentioned is a very definitive one. We remember very well from the period of detente in the 80s. Young people do not remember. However, when this saying is coming from Ronald Reagan, the President of the United States, who ran the detente negotiations with Gorbachev's Soviet Union, said, trust, but verify. You feel the duality of that. However, what experience shows us, that people, the human nature, needs badly also some unverified trusts. So that's why it is important. Why it is fundamental. Elusivity. What is elusivity? Elusivity is very difficult to grasp. When trust exists, we tempted to take it for granted. It is given. It exists. However, whenever a certain uncertainty comes up, it seems to disappear, a flu, when we start trying to prove, to define its existence, like health. Okay, I'm healthy, fine, I don't think of it. But if it lacks, there is a big problem. Why is it fundamental? Again, I can hook on one or two very good remarks of Jody. It's a lubricant of the society. Without trust, practically nothing is working. Because if we, in every single transaction of our life, we have to go back to the basics, to the zero, and start verifying everything. In that case, we lose all our time, all our life, and is evaporating. So we need absolutely, we need it for the political life, for the legal relationship, for the court, for the social climate, for all our activity in the community life and in the social life. How can I?
Don't trust.
From right to left.
Don't trust.
Don't trust this technology. Just from left to right.
Left, right.
Left, right.
You have to zoom it out. Yeah.
Ah. Don't trust.
High-tech, buddy.
Don't trust. I'm an industrial guy. I have been working in the industry and the business for 50 years now. Have you already been to works of the Daimler-Benz automotive? No. It was mentioned in the morning session that people are afraid of automatization, robotization, artificial intelligence, and so on and so on. And also the Elon Musk remark on that. What happens in the Daimler-Benz works? Band, welding robots, everything, everywhere. Like in a lot of other automotive factories. However, at Mercedes-Benz, at the end of the welding line, there is a working station. The robotically welded carrosserie comes down, and then a guy, at least 45 plus 50 years old, comes and on 10 to 12 key points he welds the carrosserie by hand. We ask the question, why the hell do you do that? These points are so important that we are not courageous enough to rely on robots. Okay? Trust. Thank you for giving. Okay, heritage, socialization, and there are mediators, there are barriers of trust, symbolic systems through which we feel it, we experience it, and we do it. Language, okay, of course, it's a certain kind of abstract thing. It enables us to make generalization, abstraction, and a lot of things. Myths, no explanation is needed. Very much important. Narratives to our origin, mission, environment, and so on. Religion provides grasping tools to maintain the trust. One of my favorites, science. The only one which is probably a non-subjective framework. We want to understand our world around, and we try to go into the better understanding. I'm speaking about real science, not misused and
What is science?
who decides? Yeah, life.
Decided.
Law, framework for relationships. Maybe one word is missing. Sanctionable framework. Culture and arts, okay, subjective and evaluative, but we would like to perceive the world. Again, let me hook back on Jody's one very good remark. How do we get a certain level of trust for crowdfunding, for where there is not at all personal relationship between the truster and the trustee? Money is a good example for that, because it is a tool. We can exchange product, services, different things without knowing anything of the party on the other side. Okay? Why is it important? Because I would like to make a small deviation now and bring into the table the term values. Values are also somewhat mediated by these tools. We don't rely on them.
We just swipe.
Up, down, this way.
There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. Values. Probably most of you, or a lot of you, know very much the Gerd Hofstede's cultural dimensions model of it is a different culture, which was shown in the previous slide. It's the culture of a community. Actually, the whole structure is built upon choices between values. Which one is more important for a given community? I don't know how many of yours made already a Hofstede type questionnaire. It's always couples, dual questions, and you have to give a cross on that. Which one is more important for you in your view? Well, you might be very consequent, and you produce a consequent list, a good hierarchy of values. Sometimes either we are not so consequent, or there are values which are very close to one another, and we make closed loops within, redundancies within that. It is an important one. We mentioned, and probably we will come back on this point, Professor Ahmed's question. Power distance. certainly one, not a full explanation, not at all a full explanation, it's too much complex, but one component maybe for a slightly better understanding of the one. Individualism versus collectivism, I will show you on the next slide. Masculinity versus femininity, I don't know if you remember, it has nothing to do with machoism and so on. It's much more about purpose-driven and people relation-driven decision-making process. Uncertainty avoidance. Who is able to take a risk? Who is courageous enough? Not necessarily by personal integrity, as a cultural environment, because it's habitual that my family, my environment, my working environment takes a risk or not. Depends. Long-termism, short-termism. Very big difference. When I was a young student, I asked my father, what could you advise me? Should I prefer quick success, quick low-hanging fruits, or take for a longer term? What is the good behavior according to you? This thinking a little bit, then said, well, I suggest you should be honest, fair, straightforward. Strategically, in the long term, it has a very good payoff return. And there is little competition. Long-termism and short-termism has very much correlation with uncertainty avoidance and indulgence versus restraint. During the past 35 years, I worked always in an international business environment, and I was able to identify some very significant differences. My local Hungarian colleagues came to me in a decision-making process. Please, boss, decide. It's not a problem if your decision is wrong, but please decide. We cannot stand. And then, in an international environment, we had Far Eastern colleagues coming, and they were just admiring us. How the hell is it possible? Problems are not there to be solved. Problems with problems. We have to live together. Okay, go a little bit further. Just a few examples for the big differences. Power distance. Yeah, Brazil, China, Germany, and United States. Just examples. By the way, as you know, in both of these selection and decision-making process, there are no good and bad answers. There are only selections, choices. The power distance is certainly quite high in the Far East, and interestingly enough, in South America. Significantly less in the northwestern side of the planet. Individualism. No miracle. United States. Top. Our Far Eastern colleagues are much more thinking in collectiva. Alone, you are small, you are little. But if you are in your community, you become significant and trustful. Masculinity, femininity doesn't have too much. Uncertainty avoidance. Interestingly enough, again, our Far Eastern colleagues are very much capable to take risks, uncertainty, manage this one. Some others don't like it. Long-term orientation. When I was in the United States, they told me, our American colleagues, in a little bit self-critical, self-ironic way, we are very strategically thinking. Our most important strategic document is the quarterly report. And that was partially true. That was partially true. Long-term orientation it is again an interesting mix-up of sequences. Is very much in the Far East and in Germany. Indulgence, as I explained to you before by the example, problems are not to be solved quickly, but so values. And let me come back on a partially an answer to our distinguished colleague in the corner. There is certainly no direct correlation with single selected values and the general trust level in societies, in communities. However, it seems that there is a certain combination of values which predestinate more certain communities to be more trustful than others. Again, just a few examples. Interpersonal trust in the world, in a general level. People were simply asked, are you generally trusting in your people around you, in the institutions around you, and in your future? And they gave a certain kind of answer, as Professor Caretaker displayed to us on a subjective scale, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, etc., etc. And then, if you have enough subjective answers, it is becoming more and more objective, for at least for the given community. I don't want to cite again a folkloristic anecdote for that.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. How should I say? A certain number of subjectivism will turn into objectivism. In the pub, if you are told you are drunken, it's better. Excuse me. If more than 3 people tell you you are drunken, it's better you go home, even if you know you didn't drink anything. Okay, another, maybe another partial response to the gentleman over there. There is a mapping, a certain type of mapping of again general trust around the world. The more dark is the blue, the higher is the general trust in the world. It seems as if it were a certain kind of, excuse me, a certain kind of bow, northwest, southeast. No explanation for that. But this is the basic experience. When I was country director of an international group, and we built up a new purchasing organization. you must know that purchasing is one of the most trustful position, because you rely on a person a lot, you give power and money in. And there is a high temptation to become corrupt. In this international group, I was definitely looking for Scandinavian purchasing manager on a selfish way, of course. I wanted to be sure or have a very high level of probability to make the good choice. Unfortunately, I didn't succeed, but finally I was able to get a United States guy who was, by the way, a little bit of Hungarian origin, so he knew the language too, from his parents and grandparents, but he was born and grown up in the States, and he made an excellent good job. So that's how it looks like. Let me come back to Professor Caretaker's slides, taking just a little bit different angle of view. The statement is exactly the same, so I start from it. No institutions are seen today as both competent and ethical. Where does this graph derive from? From the Edelman Trust Barometer, already mentioned here. The Edelman think tank started to work around early 90s. I think when the famous Fukuyama theory about the end of the history came up, and in a very simplified way we can state, okay, its end. The trust on a social and community level can be basically supported by continuous economic development, delivery and mobility, and secured, solid legislative system. At the beginning, Edelmans started to work on that basis, but very soon they realized that this is probably not enough. So they went over and they made a big sampling. So if I remember, they have an interview of about 34,000 every year. 34,000 interviews, which can be analyzed, classified according to very characteristic groups, but at the end they try to concentrate them into 4 very important groups, which is business, NGOs, media, and government. They introduced the competence score and the ethical score. Only business is seen as competent. The competence score is based on one single component. The subjective feeling of the people is asked if they do what they should do. If they do it in the right way, what they do. And they make an average and summarize the data. In terms of ethical score, they are a little bit below the borderline. And why? Here are the characteristics which say what business is doing best, generating value for owners. And this is going to be the key turn point. They are being the engine of innovation. Good, okay, fine. They drive the economic prosperity, which is absolutely needed to build upon every social and environmental aspect. All NGOs are seen as ethical. Ethical score was analyzed according to these major features: purpose-drivenness, honesty, fairness, and having vision. Same or similar question asked to people: what do you think of NGOs alongside of these characteristics? And then at the end put together the thing. What do NGOs do the best? Environmental protection, civil and human rights, poverty, illiteracy, disease. Maybe a few more, but just the most characteristic. Why are they not seen, or very close to the borderline again, as very competent? Again, we don't have a definitive answer, just a suspicion. And the suspicion is that NGOs are typically very much specific. They act on a targeted area, and therefore the competence is felt by the trustees on a specific field and not as a general. Now, excuse me, our dear international colleagues, we zoom on the Europe and the Union. Let's see the time scale. We can see a very good, very strong starting point. Although the so-called very positives or blind positives are more or less on the same low level. However, fairly positives, who were the base majority, the relative majority of the respondents in the early 2000s, started at a very high level, 40%, and they came down. Lost almost 10 points. On the contrary, the fairly negative, okay, the very negative, so the blind negatives are also down. Fairly negatives are coming up, almost gaining exactly this 10 point, which is lost by the fairly positive ones. And then the neutrals just maybe increasing a little bit. One point can be probably felt in the time scale, is the 2009, where there are some trend changes. No miracle. If we go one step down and we start asking a little bit more specifically, the first question was asked to the people, to the citizens, how do you feel about belonging to the European Union is more advantageous for you than disadvantageous? And the answer is okay. So most of the countries in the sample were responding like that. So more advantageous, more positive than more negative. However, if we go one step further down and ask, what is your opinion about the activities and professionalism of the European Parliament? As if we shift the whole graph 20 points on the left. Again, enjoy this graph. So, if we take the diagram or the matrix according to the skepticism and support, divided by also policy and regime skepticism, we can identify more or less these four groups. Okay, royal support, no problem. Exit skepticism, no problem. There is one block of respondents who do not believe that the regime is really supportive for that. The other one says, okay, maybe, but they do not select properly the policies they should act, or even if they do act, they do it in the wrong way. That's what the situation tells us. Okay, I'm finishing. I'm at the end. What are the four existential issues of the next decade? I think it was mentioned already. Again, I have to rely on my dear colleague. Income inequality. The situation is changing in terms of trust. Although there are some fixed points, some certain solid points, however, trust is changing more rapidly than values. After the war, when the European community was created, there was a big agreement that we must live in peace. And that was a cohesion factor for everyone. And this is the success story of the European Union. 70 years without war. From an economic point of view, the post-war period was a steady, strong development with small buckles until 70s and then even up to the 90s, which doesn't feed the inequality feeling. Everybody is doing better, some of them strongly, some of them not so much, but the development can be tracked. However, after the 90s, for example, the Gini coefficient started to come to a breaking point. So polarization, income inequality and wealth inequality. And this is undermining trust. Social sustainability. Sustainability in general. We realize more and more that, someone mentioned it in the morning session, sustainability is not only and exclusively about the economy. Sustainability is social and sustainability is environmental. If we are able to manage properly, in parallel, and well-balanced these three pillars of the sustainability, we can be successful. Big challenge, extremely big challenge. Information quality, in a wider sense, very wide sense. Not only speaking about the fake news. Yes, speaking about those, but not only about them. It does include the appropriate training and education. AE, digitalization, robotization. We touched upon the question. It's a danger for the people on the one side. It's an opportunity on the other side. The big challenge for everyone, business, governments, NGOs, is the time scale of the two. Technical development, digitalization, ICT has been so much accelerated that it is questionable how much education and training can take the challenge. We know that an education system we we spoke probably very shortly this morning about that, takes at least 15 years, 20 years to completely be reformed. And in 20 years' time, where the technology will be. Who is able to tell today what's going to be there? So it's uncertain. The challenge, the last question was what to do about the main questions of this conference, what to do. The clear answer of this problematics is that there is no single entity which is able to manage all of it. Alone, we cannot do. More equality and convergence in wealth and income, focus on education and training, embrace an all stakeholders model, partnership across institutions. All stakeholders model. I don't have the slide for it, but the same opinion poll tells us that other stakeholders, in other words, consumers and general society, are 4 to 5 times more important for the economic well-being as shareholders. So, all stakeholders model. Partnership. Why? Again, the Edelman court. Yeah, that's the last one, sorry. That was again the answer. What are the key questions which should be addressed and who can contribute at what percentage to the solving of this problem? We have to protect workers. Gig economy, how can I explain it? I cannot translate. The known traditional employments, everything which is not work contract and precarious. Precarious, okay. Obviously governments have a very strong role in it, but business must co-act together. Workforce retaining, the number one responsible is business, because they have the tools and they have the competence. They are the closest to the problems. So I think these are the key challenges, and we have to address them first of all. I think that was that's the last one. Thank you very much.